On a cold winter morning, students gathered outside the gates of Crescent Valley School. Cars arrived one after another. Parents rushed their children inside. Security guards checked IDs while teachers walked quickly through the entrance. Everything looked normal. Except for one thing. The old tea cellar was missing. For 15 years, he had stood at the same corner outside the school gate every single morning. Rain, storm, heat, cold. He was always there. But that morning, his tea cart was gone. Nobody knew why. By the end of that day, the entire city would learn the truth about the poor old man they had ignored for years. A truth so powerful that it would change hundreds of lives forever. His name was Rahim. Most students simply called him Tea Uncle. He was around 65 years old with grey hair, tired eyes, and rough hands burned from years of making tea over hot coal stoves. Every morning at 5 o'clock, long before sunrise, Rahim woke up inside his tiny one-room house near the railway tracks. The roof leaked during rain. The walls were cracked. The fan barely worked. But despite his poverty, the room was always clean. Near the corner stood a small wooden shelf filled with books. Mathematics books. English grammar books. Science books. Rahim loved books. He never got the chance to finish school himself. When he was 12 years old, his father became seriously ill. Rahim had to leave school and start working at a roadside restaurant. Every day he watched other children carrying school bags while he washed dirty dishes with cold water. That pain never left him. And because of that pain, he made a promise to himself. If I ever earn enough money, I will help children study. At the time, he was just a poor child. Nobody believed he could ever help anyone. But life had different plans. Every morning, Rahim pushed his old tea cart through narrow streets until he reached Crescent Valley School. The cart was old and rusty. One wheel made a strange squeaking sound. The kettle had dents all over it. Yet every morning, the smell of his tea filled the street. Parents loved his tea. Drivers stopped by before work. Security guards chatted with him daily. But the students barely noticed him. Some rich children mocked him. Imagine selling tea your whole life. Poor people never become successful. His clothes smell like smoke. Rahim heard everything. But he never became angry. He simply smiled. Because deep inside, he understood something they didn't understand yet. People who struggle quietly often carry the biggest hearts. Every evening after school closed, Rahim counted his earnings carefully beneath a dim yellow bulb. Most of the money went into a small metal box hidden beneath his bed. That box was not for him. It was for children. One night, Rahim opened an old notebook. Inside were names. Aisha Khan, Omar Ali, Fatima Noor, Bilal Ahmed. Beside every name was a number. School fees, uniform costs, book expenses, exam fees. Rahim checked each page carefully before smiling softly. All paid. For more than 10 years, Rahim had secretly paid school fees for poor children. Children whose parents could not afford education. Some had lost fathers. Some lived in slums. Some worked after school to help their family survive. Rahim never wanted credit. Only the school principal knew the truth. Principal Farooq respected Rahim deeply. One evening, the principal asked him quietly, "Why don't you let the world know what you're doing?" Rahim stirred his tea slowly. "When kindness becomes famous," he replied softly, "it sometimes loses its purity." One afternoon, Rahim noticed a young boy sitting alone near the school wall. The boy looked upset. His eyes were red from crying. Rahim walked over slowly. "What happened?" he asked gently. The boy wiped his tears quickly. "Nothing." Rahim sat beside him in silence for a moment. Finally, the boy spoke. "My mother can't pay my school fees anymore." Rahim stayed silent. "My father died last year," the boy continued. "The school said if we don't pay by Friday, I'll have to leave." Rahim looked carefully at the child. "What's your name?" "Seima." That night, Rahim opened his metal box beneath the bed. Inside were neatly folded bills he had saved for months. The next morning, Principal Farooq received an envelope. Inside was the exact amount for Seima's yearly fees. No note. No name. Only one sentence written carefully. "Please let the child continue studying." Weeks passed. Saima began spending more time near Rahim's tea cart. Sometimes he helped wash cups after school. Sometimes he simply sat there talking. Rahim enjoyed listening to him. Saima dreamed of becoming a teacher someday. "I want to help children who can't afford education," he once said. Rahim smiled proudly. "You already have the right heart," he replied. One rainy evening, a black luxury car stopped near Rahim's tea cart. A wealthy businessman stepped out wearing an expensive coat. "Tea," he said coldly. Rahim served him politely. The businessman took one sip and frowned. "This tea is too sweet." Rahim apologized immediately. The man rolled his eyes. "You poor people never learn professionalism." Nearby customers became uncomfortable. But Rahim simply nodded politely. The businessman threw money onto the cart and drove away. Weeks later, that same businessman visited Crescent Valley School for a charity event. During the ceremony, Principal Farooq spoke about anonymous donations helping poor students continue their education. The businessman became curious. "Who donates?" he asked. The principal smiled mysteriously. "You would never guess." That evening, the businessman secretly followed the principal. And for the first time in his life, he saw Rahim handing over money for children's fees. The businessman stood frozen in shock. The same old tea seller he had insulted was doing more for society than many millionaires. That moment changed him forever. Years ago, Rahim had a younger sister named Mariam. She loved studying and dreamed of becoming a doctor. But after their father became sick, the family had no money left. Rahim left school first. Then Mariam. One evening, Mariam cried while packing away her books. "I wanted to help people," she whispered. Rahim never forgot those tears. A few years later, Mariam became seriously ill. Without proper medical care, she passed away. Rahim blamed poverty. From that day onward, he believed education could save lives. And he dedicated the rest of his life to helping children continue studying. Months later, Crescent Valley School announced a national speech competition. Students from different cities would participate, and the winner would receive a scholarship. Saima wanted to join, but he lacked confidence. One evening, Rahim noticed him practicing alone near the school wall. "You speak well," Rahim said. Saima shook his head. "Everyone else is smarter." Rahim smiled. "Do you know why tea tastes strong?" Saima looked confused. "Because it survives boiling water." The boy laughed. Then Rahim added softly, "Strong people are not those who never struggle. Strong people are those who keep going despite struggle." Those words stayed with Saima. Weeks later, he won first place in the competition. When reporters asked who inspired him, Saima pointed toward the old tea seller outside the school gate. One summer afternoon, Rahim suddenly collapsed beside his tea cart. People rushed toward him in panic. An ambulance arrived within minutes. Inside Rahim's pocket, doctors found a small key. Principal Farooq recognized it immediately. It belonged to Rahim's medal box. The principal visited Rahim's tiny house later that evening. Inside the box was the notebook. Page after page. Names. School receipts. Letters from students. Photos. Hundreds of children. Hundreds. Some had become teachers. Some engineers. Some nurses. Some police officers. The principal sat silently for a long time while tears filled his eyes. The poor tea seller had changed more lives than anyone realized. The next morning during school assembly, Principal Farooq finally revealed the truth about Rahim. Students fell silent. Teachers wiped tears from their eyes. One student secretly recorded the speech and uploaded it online. Within hours, millions watched the video. News channels arrived outside the school. Journalists crowded the street. Headlines appeared everywhere. The tea seller who educated hundreds. The poor man with the richest heart. The hero nobody noticed. People across the country became emotional. Celebrities shared the story. Donations began pouring into the school. But Rahim knew nothing about it. He was still lying unconscious in a hospital bed. When Rahim finally opened his eyes, he looked confused. "Where am I?" "In the hospital," Principal Farooq replied gently. Rahim tried sitting up. "My tea cart." The principal smiled through tears. Forget the tea cart for now. Then he handed Raheem a phone. Millions of people were talking about him online. Raheem stared silently at the screen. I never wanted fame, he whispered. The principal nodded. I know. Raheem looked out the window quietly. Did the children pay their fees this month? Even in pain, that was still his first concern. A week later, Raheem was discharged from the hospital. As he arrived near the school gates, he suddenly stopped walking. Hundreds of students stood outside waiting for him. Teachers, parents, security guards, former students, all holding flowers. The children began clapping loudly. Some cried openly. Seima stepped forward first. You gave us education, he said emotionally. Another student added. You gave us hope. Raheem's eyes filled with tears. For years, he believed nobody noticed him. But now he realized something beautiful. Quiet kindness always leaves footprints, even if people notice them late. Months later, the city launched the Raheem Education Foundation. Scholarships were created for poor children. Volunteers joined. Teachers offered free tutoring. Businessmen donated money. Even the rich businessman who once insulted Raheem became one of the foundation's biggest supporters. One day, he visited Raheem personally. I judged you without knowing your heart, he admitted. Raheem smiled warmly. The world teaches us to respect wealth, he said softly. But true wealth is kindness. Years passed. Raheem grew older and weaker. But every morning, he still visited the school gates. Not to sell tea anymore. Just to watch children walk inside carrying books. That sight made him happy. One winter morning, Seima, now a teacher himself, sat beside Raheem quietly. You changed my life, Seima said. Raheem smiled gently. No, he replied. You changed your own life. I only opened the door. Fog covered the street while children laughed in the distance. Raheem closed his eyes peacefully. And for the first time in many years, he rested forever. Some heroes wear expensive suits. Some become famous. Some appear on television. But sometimes, real heroes stand quietly on street corners, serving tea, helping strangers, changing lives without asking for recognition. Raheem never became rich. He never owned a big house. But he gave hundreds of children something more valuable than money. A future. And even after he was gone, his kindness continued living inside every child he helped. Because true greatness is not measured by how much you own. It is measured by how many lives become brighter because you existed.